So the last few weeks, we've worked on some strumming elements and we've worked on some finger picking elements. And today we're going to start talking about what I think is the third core technique to ukulele playing. And I call it melodic picking. And to me, the best way to work on melodic picking is to utilize the thumb on your playing hand. So while strumming, we tend to use our index finger. Finger picking, we tend to use multiple fingers. With melodic picking, we tend to just use our thumb. And the first thing we need to learn is kind of the format, the way to kind of hold the ukulele for this. So what I like to do is I like to take my little finger and put it in this little divot here, just ever so slightly, just barely touching it. And if your ukulele is a different shape, that's okay. Just try to kind of position it as close as you can to this. And then I'm going to take my ring and my middle fingers, and I'm going to place them kind of on the outer bout right over here. And my index finger is actually just going to kind of be free floating out here. It's not going to do much of anything. And when I do this, I'm then going to bend my wrist a little bit and make contact with my elbow onto the ukulele. So you see, I make a little bit of a triangle almost. It doesn't have to be really steep. It's okay if it's just a little bit of a bend, but if you're flush, it's really hard to get this technique. So a little bit of a bend there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our thumb. We're going to keep this part of our thumb straight. All of the motion we want to come from the lower part of the thumb. We don't want it doing this. We want it doing this. I'm going to take that part of the thumb and I'm going to place it on any one of the four strings. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to place it at a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to try to position it right about where the fretboard meets the sound hole of the ukulele. So right about this area. So it looks sort of like this at that 45-degree angle. So when I'm kind of holding the uke like this, and then I put my thumb out, you can see the little bit of a triangle that it makes in this sort of movement. And what's so great about melodic picking is, unlike strumming and finger picking, you can hold your ukulele up pretty well with just your picking hand, and you have a lot more control. It's one of the reasons why I like this style so much, is I feel like it's easier to hold the instrument. So that 45-degree angle is important because that gives you a very neutral sort of sound. And let's go ahead and pluck the strings. Let's go and play our G, C, E, and A. And you'll see what I'm doing as far as what the finger is plucking. I'm keeping it straight, right? So I'm not bending it here and plucking out. I'm keeping the finger straight. And I'm having the string move the finger a bit before it goes on each string. And the reason for that 45-degree angle is this is just a very solid tone for when you want something that's not too bright and not too warm. If you want to make it brighter, you can. All that you have to do is take this finger and stretch it backwards to be more perpendicular to the strings and down over the sound hole, or even behind the sound hole more. If you listen to this, almost sounds more like a banjo. So there's this. Much brighter. And on the flip side, I can bring my finger more forward and more parallel to the strings. And that makes it sort of softer and warmer. And so when I get comfortable with these different techniques, I can kind of pick which way I'd like to melodically pick to be able to get a different type of sound. The most, stable one is right here, and that's the one you'll use the most. But sometimes when you want something bright, you can move it down. Or if you want something a little warmer, you can move it up. So it's something to kind of play with. For now, let's try to stick right in this area and get comfortable with it, because it's easier to move to the outsides when you're really comfortable on the inside right here. So let's go ahead and just try plucking our G, and then our C, then our E, then our A. A little trick that I really like with this is something that's called a rest stroke. And what that is when my thumb comes off of one of the strings, so let's say it's on the G, when it goes down to the C, I have my thumb go into the C string and rest on it before I pluck whatever's next. That allows my finger to have a point of reference so that when I'm plucking, I know where to stop. And then the C will stop on the sort of E string. And the E will stop on the A. And the A won't really stop on anything. You kind of imagine that there's a string underneath there. And this is a technique you'll only get better with over time. I still, to this day, having played the ukulele for 20 years now, I still will sometimes play a note and be like, that was the best I've ever played it. Because you'll never truly master it. It always gets better. So with this style, what's cool about it is it's kind of like a hybrid between strumming and picking, because we can strum through combinations of strings. For instance, I can strum through my 4 strings like this. And that's kind of almost more strumming, but I can also pick strings individually, such as maybe I play my A string over and over, or my E string, or my C, or my G. I can play combinations of strings as well. So a lot of different things online that have what are called tabs, which we'll talk about again later on in this course, are going to use this sort of style to play those notes. Now let's talk just a little bit about why I call it melodic picking. Melodies are sort of the core feature of a song, and the most traditional way that we perceive and hear melodies is it's whatever is sang. So if you're listening to a band, whoever is singing, they're singing the melody of the song. And melodies are very human. We like that sort of human voice type of sound for our melodies. So with that in mind, we usually want a single melody line to be played at a time. Human voices can't sing 2 notes at once, so sometimes we like to just pick 1 note at a time so that we can create that sort of sound. And to start this, we're going to learn how to solo right now before we learn anything else, which is kind of crazy because if you've ever tried soloing, it can feel very overwhelming. But we're going to solo in A minor using my absolute favorite way to do it. So if you have a friend with an ukulele, this works even better, but it's okay. I'll kind of play that friend role today if you don't. But what we're going to start, somebody's going to strum, and they're going to strum an A minor 7 chord. Now, if you remember from earlier in our course, an A minor 7 is all open. So if you own 2 ukuleles and you have a friend, you just give them that ukulele and you tell them to start strumming down and up, and they can be your backing track, right? And while they're your backing track, let's talk about how you can create a solo really easily. We are only going to play our A string, which is the one closest to the ground. That's all we're going to use, nothing else. We're going to use our thumb with our playing hand to pluck that string. And our fretting hand is going to fret a bunch of different notes. And the way that we know what notes to fret is by looking at our ukuleles. Now my ukulele has a marker here at 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, and mine even has one on 15. Yours might not have markers at all of these spots, but all of the spots that mine show are the notes that you're allowed to play when you're doing this solo. So you can play your open string. You can also fret the 3rd fret. You can fret the 5th fret. You can fret the 7th fret. You can fret the 10th fret, the 12th fret. You want to go real up there, even 15, right? Now I just use my index finger for all of that, right? It can be a good idea to try it with different fingers as you get comfortable, but right now we're trying to make this as simple as possible. So use whatever finger you want. It doesn't really matter. And if you have one of your friends start playing the ukulele down and up like this, you can start playing this A string with any combination of these notes to create the sound of a solo. In fact, I'm going to show you what this sounds like right now. I've recorded a little thing on my iPad playing this, and it sounds something like this as I pull it open. 1 second here as it tries to crash on me. So here's just a ukulele strumming that down and up, right? And if you'd like to play along, go ahead and try strumming down and up with this, and go and listen to me do a solo now with this. I'm only going to play 0, 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15. Again, just the ones that have the numbers and the dots on the side. Might sound something like this. Cool, right? It's just using those strings, or excuse me, those frets on that one string going all the way through. Now, what I just did, there's a lot of movement. It can be a little bit overwhelming to try to do all of that at once. So instead, just stick to 1 or 2 notes. Maybe you just play 0 and the 3, and you can make that sound pretty good. Might be something like this. It helps to use this thing called space. Let those notes ring a little bit. You don't have to be complicated to sound good. You can introduce maybe one new one like the 5. jump around, skip around, do whatever you want, because as long as you're playing those fretted, or excuse me, those notes with the fret markers on them, you're going to sound great. And that's what makes this such a fun exercise where you can really play with anyone. Just give them an ukulele, tell them to strum down and up, and you're playing that A minor solo. As you get better as a player, this is something that you can revisit when you get comfortable with things like hammer-ons and pull-offs and all these other intricate techniques. If you're already doing some of those, you can try that here too. It sounds really good. Pretty fun to mess around with and play with. And to this day, I still love doing this exercise because it's just so much fun. It's so easy to do, and it's all just there on that one string. So when you're first learning how to play this melodic style picking, use your thumb, play that A string, and just try working on, again, where there are numbers. On mine, that's 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, and 15. All of those notes sound great in the key of A minor. So that's a really fun way to get going with soloing and get going with some of these sounds. But it's also really inefficient, right? Because if we're just playing on one string, we're very limited in terms of what we're going to be able to do. So the other thing that we want to introduce today is our first ever scale. Now, I'm not a big scale person. I took music lessons growing up. I played the saxophone. I had to learn my scales. And frankly, I didn't enjoy it very much. So when I was learning the ukulele, I kind of made a point to not learn scales. Well, that changed. I did learn my scales. But what I tried to do is I tried to learn my scales based on melodies, because that's all that they're there for. Scales we only learn to be able to make music with. And today we're going to learn the first scale, our C major scale, which you'll notice is also what we'll need to be able to use to play When the Saints Go Marching In, what we've been playing for our finger picking and our strumming to this point. So we need to memorize our C major scale. And it's not that hard. Promise. We're going to start by playing our C string, which is the second one from the top. We're going to play that open. That is our C note. The next note we're going to play is a D note. You don't have to remember the names of the notes. If you just remember the numbers and what to play, that's more than enough. And you're going to use your middle finger here on the second fret of that C string and play it. Now, why am I using the middle finger? Well, when you're playing the scale, we're trying to keep one finger per fret. So anytime you play the first fret, it's your index finger. Anytime you play the second fret, it's your middle finger. Anytime you play the third fret, it's your ring finger. And anytime you play the fourth, you'd use your pinky, but there's no fourth fret here. So it's just these three that we're sticking to. So again, we've got our C note open on the C string, and then our D note 2 on the C string with our middle finger. Then we're going to go to our E string, which is the next one there. And remember, if you pluck that C string correctly, you should already be resting on that E string with your thumb. You'll play the open E string. Then you're going to play 1 with your index finger on the E string. Then you're going to play 3 with your ring finger on the E string. So let's try just those E string ones again. We have 0 on the E, 1 on the E, 3 on the E. Let's go ahead and try from the start again. So we start on the C, which is the second from the top there. Play that open. Then 2, then we're going to play the E string open, then 1, then 3. Again, using whatever finger needs to be there. So one more time there, open on the C, 2 on the C with our middle finger, which is the D note we said, open on the E, which is an E note, 1 on the E with our index, which is an F note, 3 on the E string with our ring finger, which is a G note. Quick little tip, you don't have to take this finger off when you play this one, because the only thing that matters when you're playing an ukulele is whatever the last note is that's being fretted. So a lot of times people do this, and it makes it so much harder than if they keep the fingers on until they have to take them off. Now we're almost there. There's only 3 more notes in the scale. We've just played C, D, E, F, G. Now we're going to go to our A string, which is our string closest to the floor. Play that open. Then we're going to play a B note, which is going to be middle finger on 2 of the A string. And our last note is a C note here, 3 on the A string with our ring finger. Again, you don't have to move that middle finger when you play that 3 on the A because it's behind. So let's go and try that A string again. Start on the open A, 2 on the A with the middle, and 3 on the A with the ring. So let's go and try this whole thing. There's a lot going on there. Let's go and start on our C string open, C note, the middle finger on 2 of the C, D note, E string open, E note, E string 1st fret, F note, E string 3rd fret, G note, A string open, A note, A string 2nd fret, B note, and A string 3rd fret, back to the C. And that sounds like this if you play it relatively quickly. It's a nice sound, right? It's very familiar, especially if you've ever taken a music class before. I'm sure you've heard this. And we can also practice it going down as well. So let's go ahead and try that. So let's start with 3 on the A. Then we'll play the 2 on the A with the middle finger. That's the B note. Play the open A for the A note. 3 on the E with the ring finger. That's the G note. 1 on the E with the index. That's the F note. Open on the E. It's the E note. 2 on the C with the middle finger there. That's the D note. And open on the C to finish it. So if you like numbers, it's 0, 2, 0, 1, 3, 0, 2, 3. It's a little confusing, but it's relatively easy to remember because the first one's just 0, 2, and then 0, 1, 3, and then 0, 2, 3. Odds are good too. If you know this sound, you can sound it out as you're working on it. Because if you try doing this, that clearly is not correct, right? You can hear that that is not our major scale. So let's try it again. 0 on the C, 2, 0 on the E, 1, 3, 0 on the A, 2 on the A, 3 on the A. Let's try going back down. 3 on the A, 2 on the A, 0 on the A, 3 on the E, 1 on the E, 0 on the E, 2 on the C, 0 on the C. Now, that might be a lot. And at first, it's okay to just kind of sit there and get comfortable putting your fingers like this because it's so different to what we've done to this point, right? Playing chords, strumming chords, fingerpicking chords, that's a totally different thing than playing these individual lines. That's a different beast entirely. So it's okay to take some time to get comfortable with this. But C major scale, I just told you I don't like scales, and here I am showing you a scale. Well, if you descend the scale and you add a little bit of rhythm and spice to it, you can make this sound like this. Now, it's not my favorite song in the world, but the holidays are getting closer. That's Joy to the World, right? It's literally the descending C major scale, just with a little bit of rhythm added in there to make it a little bit more interesting. That's a really neat thing about scales, is they're just melodies hidden in there. And the melody that we're going to work on with it is When the Saints Go Marching In, which is what we've been playing up until this point. And here's what's cool. It only uses the C and the E strings. The A string's not going to come to this party. It's all C and E, which is fine because our A string had its own kind of bluesy party earlier, right? But When the Saints is going to start on the open C, and that's O, and then When it's going to skip the next note, the 2, it's going to go right to the open E string. So it goes O, When, and then we're going to play our F note, the 1, the, and then the G note, the 3 on the E for Saints. Oh, when the Saints. And it does it again. Go marching in. Pretty cool, right? It's basically the scale, just one note is being skipped, which is really, nice because it shows us that we can learn a scale, but we can also try to make it about the melody instead. So let's go and try playing that. So it goes, oh, when the Saints go marching in. It does it again. Oh, when the Saints. And then it goes. And what is that note? Is it that? No, is it that? Is it that? This is where sounding things out becomes really important. And one way to do that is to sing the note and try to line it up. Another way to do it is just to kind of listen and see if you can figure it out. So let's go ahead and try getting that point. So it goes, oh, when the Saints go marching in. Oh, when the Saints go. It's the open E that we're going to play. And then march, it's going to be the 0 on the C. And then in, back to the E, and then to the 2 on the C. That's crazy, right? But you can hear how all of these notes are in there. And And I made a little mistake there. I played this F when it should have been played. And I heard, oh, that's not quite right. And then I kind of move on. This is what's really important when we're learning this stuff, because it helps build what we call our musicality. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that in the next couple lessons. But this exercise of listening and trying to figure it out is so incredibly important, because it's really easy to identify the right note after you've played the wrong note several times. And there's no real substitute for that. So if you're sitting here and you're trying to figure out like this, you're not alone. That's how I learned it too. And so at the end of the day, though, what we're looking for, something like this. I'm going to play it really slow so you can try to play along. Hopefully I don't make a mistake. I'd say it's a 50-50 shot I do. So it's something like this. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. How I'd like to be in that number. When the saints go marching in. Oof, did it mistake free. It's the first time I've ever done that. So that's really what's important, is listening. And if that song doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. Look for other songs, other sounds, just like we showed here. Things like that are in there, or I don't know why I have Christmas on the mind, but right now I guess I do. So you can find a lot of different songs in this scale, and that can be really fun to kind of work with and explore. So that is melodic picking in a nutshell, using the thumb. What we're going to be talking about in our next session is really building on this, talking about what's called chord melody playing, which is where you start to combine some of the things that we worked on to this point. And that's the main style of playing I like. But it's really important to get comfortable with some of this basic melodic playing before you try to approach that. So I'm going to open it up to any questions people have now. Yeah, I'm just happy I didn't cough at all. So let me see here. Dee got a message. I challenge my students to figure out the first phrase of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in open strings. Oh, yeah. That's great. And then got a fret finally there, but you can even do it with the scale. It's all that same scale. Fantastic one. Also, did you know that Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and the alphabet song are the same thing? I learned that only like 5 years ago, like having already taught music lessons for 5 years, and it blew my mind. I could not believe it. But anyways, any questions at all? If you do, feel free to unmute or wave, and or if you have a question in the chat, you can do that too. Baba Black Sheep too, just different rhythm. Oh man, yep, that checks out. Oh, that's awesome. Music is cool. So yeah. Jenny.
What about the scale on other frets? Should we be practicing that?
So the C scale on other frets, or
yes.
So, yeah. So for now, when you're starting with this, it's a really good idea to sit in that sort of area and get comfortable with it. One of the dangers people have when they're learning scales is they try to do too much too fast, and they never really absorb what it is that they're learning. That's why I like the concept of working on a song with it, because that song really entices you to explore a little bit, because we can sit here and I can like do my C major scale, and then we can think about modes, and now my D Dorian scale and my E Phrygian scale and F Lydian, all that stuff. But the problem is it doesn't give me anything other than muscle memory of what to do. It doesn't make the connection of how it sounds. And so at first, just working on that. As you get more comfortable, absolutely, we want to move it. And the way that we move it kind of changes for the individual too, because especially a high G ukulele is one of the worst instruments like in the world to learn scales with, because you can't do them very many different ways. If you play a C major scale, you're technically supposed to start and end on a C note. And if you do that, you play it here, and then where else can we play it? Well, I could jump up an octave, right? And C is one of the best ones for that, but what happened to all this area, right? And so you can put those notes in different places, and that's usually where we get these things called modes. And modes are just going to be starting and ending on different notes of a key. So if I started and ended on a D note, technically that's called D Dorian. The name doesn't matter. I'm still playing C major. I'm still playing those notes, just now starting and ending on a D, which totally changes the sound. But with my more advanced students, that's kind of how I teach scales, is through modes, because on the ukulele, you kind of have to. It's not like a guitar or a piano where you can just learn it in 2 octaves and call it a day. It doesn't work as well. So I really would rather people work on a song in the key of C major that maybe uses some of the notes up here to learn rather than just moving the scale. So does that make sense? Cool. Alex says, really good practice. Can we use other fingers for melody picking, or is it thumb only? You absolutely can use other fingers, and lots of players do. But in my personal opinion, the thumb gives you the most opportunity for the best tone. A lot of like classical guitar players will kind of alternate pick, and they'll use like their index and middle finger. And it's just so difficult to make that sound really, really nice. And we're going to be talking about this more in our next session too, as we talk about chord melody. The thumb lets you kind of sweep through the strings a bit, and it makes it so much more musical, I find. But you absolutely can. And it's not to say I don't use finger picking when I'm playing some of the chord melody and melodic picking. I absolutely do. Sometimes I'll even strum. But the thumb is that sort of pillar technique that I really like to use for it, because it just allows for so much for that tone and that control. It's very difficult to get the same kind of depth with the finger picking. It's a different sound. And it's not that this is worse, it's just different. It's difficult to make it sound very vocal, very voice-like, which I find is the most pure form of a melody sound. So super interesting with the modes. Yeah, modes are crazy. My relationship with scales is a long and complicated one. So I greatly prefer playing just songs and melodies because it helps me learn those scales in a more intimate way, a more impactful way. So, love that you taught us free play and then the C scale. Yeah, oh, absolutely, right? No one should start with a scale. That's the worst. Dee said, you said you were playing for 20 years. How old were you when you started? So the first time I ever picked up an ukulele, I think I was about 11 years old. And my grandfather had one. And one day he had a boat that we'd stay on in the summer sometimes. And one day I was up there and it was raining and my Game Boy ran out of batteries. And I didn't know what to do. So I played the ukulele. I played it for like 10 minutes or something, which for me at 11 is a pretty impressive amount of time to do anything. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And then I put it down because we found some double A's or something. And the next year I picked it up again and my batteries weren't dead that time. And, each year I kind of picked it up a little more. And when I was about 13 or 14 is when I was like, oh, this is fun. I want to get one. And my parents were very supportive, bought me one right away. And I just kind of became really into it. And I really started playing very seriously when I was about 18. That's when it became a big thing, if that makes sense, where it was more than just CF and G7, where I really wanted to play the instrument a lot. And so cool. So any other questions at all? Jay says, do you write music? I do. I actually have an album called Dragonfly that you can find on any streaming service or iTunes, whatever else. My website is mattukulele.com, and you can get music there too, as well as see videos and things. I haven't written very much recently. My relationship with the ukulele and with music is really tied to teaching, and I'm fine with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I just haven't really felt the itch to write much in the last several years. Also kind of coincides with when my son was born. I think I'm just more tired all the time. So cool. Any other questions at all? Awesome. Well, I will see you guys next week where we will be talking about chord melody. So we'll be taking what we talked about today and we'll be putting in some chord elements with it to play things at the same time. And then our last episode will be the following week where we will kind of close it all up and talk about where people can take it from there. So as always, let me know if you have any questions at all. You can feel free to contact me on my Patreon page or on YouTube or whatever else. And thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you guys next week. La 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 la.